but you are the primary sponsor of this motion. It's work that you said that you wanted to do. Why is this important?
Well, Calgary is growing up as a city. When we think about the budgets and major decisions that we're involved in, the city of Calgary now has a larger budget than many provincial governments, many territories here in the country. So, a lobbyist registry is all about catching up. We have growing up to do as a city in terms of the accountability and governance measures. And look, I believe that lobbying government officials, whether at the city or provincial or federal level, it's a legitimate undertaking. There are private business interests who have a stake in the decisions that are made every single day, but the balance needs to be with public scrutiny and the public good. So, having Calgary catch up to other municipalities like Toronto and other places across North America is really important to me, and I think really important to Calgarians because it provides more line of sight in terms of who's influencing decisions. So, if there's public money on the line and a private business entity is looking to influence city council or even city administration decision, I believe that Calgarians have a right to know that information. So again, a lobbyist registry is a relatively low impact way for us to be able to share more with the public about who is influencing these decisions. But really, at the end of the day, it's big money involved in these decisions. Sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars are at stake. And I think it's really important for the city to catch up to where other municipalities across Canada are operating at, but especially also other provincial and federal governments.
This initially came up at a time where there was an RCMP investigation into some members of council. Do you believe that having this lobbyist registry in place at that time would have at least red flagged maybe some of that back and forth that was going on?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into past events, but what I will say is why I campaigned on a lobbyist registry in the 2021 election was to better include Calgarians in the decisions that are being made. There are legitimate reasons for private business interests to want to influence decisions at City Council, and that's the decision making process that we undertake every single day is to balance the public good with private benefit. And I don't think that they're always competing goals. As an example, the needing, or rather, for example, the need to build housing for Calgarians. We know that government alone can't build enough housing to keep life affordable. So we need to work in tandem with private interests in terms of servicing arrangements, when and where we grow as a city, land use or zoning decisions. So the lobbying in itself is a legitimate activity, but I think having more line of sight for Calgarians to understand when and why those decisions are being influenced, I think is really important. And a criticism I've heard is that this may be adding red tape that otherwise could get in the way of doing business, and that's not at all my intent. I think that there's a major difference between, say, a volunteer organization or an individual calling a council office about a pothole versus somebody who is actually paid to underwork a business undertaking to lobby a decision. So this motion is all about examining what's in place in other places. We look at Toronto, we look at other jurisdictions across Canada. They've all modernized their approach, and ultimately, council here in Calgary is responsible for billions of dollars every single year, and we need to catch up to what those other jurisdictions are doing.
Who should the onus be on in your case? Is it like I think counselors are already disclosing, who they're maybe meeting with, who they're receiving donations from, but is this now administration's role to make sure that the names are on this registry? Is it the developers or the consultants or the lobbyists' role to add their name to this registry, or is it up to
Yeah.
counselors still?
Yeah, Scott. So to be clear, this motion before council is going to be exploring the models that are possible and the models that have been undertaken in other cities across Canada. There's different ways to approach this. If we look at, say, the template that's in place right now at the provincial level, the onus is on the paid agent to disclose themselves and to register. So I believe that it's a reasonable ask if you are a third party being paid to influence a decision, that responsibility and that onus be placed on you. So this is not about the conduct of the elected officials whatsoever. It's about having clear guidelines for those who are paid to influence council decisions. So there's many different ways we could approach this. If we look, for example, at the federal disclosures, you can see it's basic information that's provided It's who the main entity is that could benefit. It's who is being hired to influence the decision, and then who is being influenced in the decision. So I won't give specific examples here, but you can see at the provincial level as well, it's a relatively straightforward, easy to follow disclosure. And I'd like to see this updated as closely as possible in real time and done online so that it's relatively easily searchable.
You said you don't want to go back to previous decisions, but I think about something like the deal for Cowboys Park and how we understand that there's a deal in place, but the deal itself is completely in secret. Does a lobbyist registry go far enough to addressing those type of concerns when Calgarians obviously know that something happened, know that the deal is in place, but they just can't know anything about it? Is there more that needs to be done?
So, lobbyist registry in and of itself won't address the concerns that Calgarians have about past decisions. But now that we are here, a brand new council, new leadership, new decisions to be made, I know that vast majority of my council colleagues want to push for greater transparency on land deals, on major transactions, zoning decisions, and so on, above and beyond what the provincial government states out. Right now, there's zero code of conduct expectations for municipal elected officials. So we're exploring ways that we can, within our own authorities, tighten up those expectations that the public has from us. The conversation on, say, the land deal for Cowboys Park, the update to the Millennium Park sponsorship. I'm going to continue to advocate for the terms of that deal to be disclosed. My understanding is that city administration has made formally the request that the terms of the deal be made public, but at this point it's Penny Lane Entertainment who refuses to agree to that. So the terms, I can't get into too much of the details of the deal itself, but part of the deal was that both sides would agree to keep it confidential. I certainly would not support that. I think that was a big mistake of the previous council, but now that we're here, now that we're bound by those terms, we have to work within the terms that are set out. So I'm going to continue to advocate, and I think especially given some of the public discourse about Cowboys, about the situation with the tent operators more generally, I think having more transparency here will help improve public trust, but also help reputationally to Cowboys. So again, we all benefit from having more transparency and more sets of eyes on this. And as for me, I have nothing to hide, and I'm sure that the Cowboys ownership don't have anything to hide either.
Mayor, you say you're bound by the terms of that agreement. Do you intend to try and change that deal ahead of the next stampede, ahead of the next Cowboys music festival?
So now on getting into the deal itself, I'm a bit between a rock and a hard place. I can't go into too much of the mechanics of it, but it is fair to say that I am bound by this, even though it was a previous mayor and council's decision. Even though I personally disagree with the deal itself, I am bound by the deal. And look, whether it's the Cowboys deal, whether it's say the arena deal with the Flames. Even if I may not necessarily agree with all of it, I think in good faith, a handshake means something. A promise made is a promise kept, and I want the city to uphold its end of the bargain. But I also want these private interests to uphold their end of it too. So I'm be looking at ways that, say, through mutual amendment or mutual agreement, we can address at the very least, the confidentiality piece. I think it's so critical for Calgarians to know if it's public space that is being given over essentially to a private operator, that it be made very clear what the terms of that arrangement is, what the money was that changed hands, and so on. So I'll be working within the terms that were set out with that deal with Cowboys to address the public concerns. But ultimately, I think it's important for me to honor those agreements that were held in the past. And a central part of that is to avoid longer term or greater severity of financial costs that could be associated from us not upholding our ends of the bargain. So for the city to act unilaterally and to have this potentially play out in the courts or legal action, that just exposes Calgarians to even greater financial costs than what would otherwise be acceptable. So I want to work in good faith with these partners. I may not have agreed with, say, the terms of these things, but I think on a go-forward basis, I don't want us ever to again be in a situation where we're giving over public enjoyment of a park for private operators for private profit.
Mayor, Center City Enterprise Area.
Yep.
Tomorrow, Infra and Planning is going to be asked to consider making that district permanent. Those permit relaxations for downtown storefronts.
Mhm.
I believe introduced when you were a councillor the
Yep.
first time around. Do you support making these relaxations permanent, or is this a case of preferential treatment for downtown?
Well, from my perspective as mayor, and I think for many of my council colleagues, our focus is on certainty, stability in terms of these rules. We want to be predictable. We want to make it easy for these business interests to do business, but we also want to make sure that we're balancing, say, the regulations that we apply with the community needs. So in this case, I think the Center City pilot has been a great success story. Many third-party business organizations applaud the red tape reduction that the City of Calgary has implemented as part of that. And I think committing to that on a go-forward basis, maintaining that perpetually, I think is really important. But where I would be hesitant to expand is beyond that Center City district area. When we think about the needs and the operational demands of the downtown, it's quite different from, say, a community or suburban context. So I think that the business and industry have been asking for us to apply more or the business and third-party interests have been asking us to apply more relaxations outside of that central core area. And I'd be open to looking at that on a case-by-case basis, but I don't think that the relaxations that are applied for Calgary's downtown would make sense writ large for the rest of the city.
Mayor, I've got a couple of questions about vote data from City Council
Okay.
from the start.
Yep.
So far, you have voted yes to 87% of the motions.
Dang, where's my
forward.
no button's broken from the last term, so it's.
I mean, is there any explanation, any rationale for that?
You know, I've spent probably more time than anybody else, and I don't make this claim lightly, but I've probably spent more time than anybody else. I remember as a summer intern studying the vote patterns of city councils, and I think that whether somebody votes yes or no on a motion is practically meaningless information. It really depends on the debate, it depends on the context, and it doesn't distinguish between, say, committee work and council work. I would argue that if something has really been vetted, debated, improved by virtue of committee, and it's being sent to council, it's almost a sure thing at that point because the heavy lifting has been done at a prior meeting. So I wouldn't read too much into terms of whether somebody votes yes or votes no on a given topic. What I will say, though, is that I try to keep an open mind. I come into many issues, certainly with my own experience, my own judgments, my own most evidence, or my own evidence and research. But I have an open mind to the arguments of my colleagues. And what I've found is that this is a very practical city council. We have the ability to work together as a team. We have a fair opportunity for a sounding board when there's an important ward issue and a council member puts on it on the table. The rest of council really takes their job to listen very seriously. So I'm all for the stats and all for the information, but I would say that just looking at percentages like that, it's data, but it's not very meaningful for Calgarians to really get a sense of how they're being represented. So what I'd like to see more is just the qualitative piece in terms of engagement on topics, how people are participating in the process, whether they're putting forward amendments, how they use their time to debate. So again, ultimately, how somebody voted is really important, but the yes or no is not necessarily meaningful because it doesn't provide the color, the commentary, the feeling of the debate itself.
So then you're saying that it's meaningless, that there's a pattern that's emerged, that it's 8-7, pretty much. Generally speaking, there's a side with 8 and there's a side of 7. So you're saying that that pattern showing that you are aligned with certain councillors and that there's a certain set of councillors who are generally against you is generally meaningless?
Well, I look at the major issues that were important to my agenda as mayor. The repeal of blanket rezoning, ultimately a 13-2 motion. The budget finalization of my first budget as mayor was unanimous. I look at the downtown police station vote, again, 11 or 12 votes in favor of that. So I look at the major, meaty, substantive issues, whether it's public safety, whether it's land use and planning, whether it's budget. I'm able to enjoy, as mayor, the vast majority of my council colleagues' support. And I'm not going to suggest that there aren't 8-7 votes, but it's mostly on the more performative things like whether we should have water bottles. It's not anything that's really important to Calgarians, but I would say on the topics that are the most important to me and Calgarians as part of my mandate for mayor, the repeal of blanket rezoning, the downtown police station, our 1.8% property tax increase, all of those issues, you'll see vast majority of support. So there's always going to be differences between us, but I think it really depends on what the issue is. So you may see breakdowns of 8 and 7, but what's most interesting of this council is you see combinations of all sorts of kinds. So it's not always the same eight who are voting in favor of something. It's not always the same 7 who are voting opposed, but the vast majority of the meaty, substantive issues that matter to Calgarians, council has been very strongly united. So again, it depends on the issue, but I'd say the more basic topics, the stuff of relatively trivial nature, you'll see those 8-7 splits. But on the major things we're dealing with, the repeal of zoning, or the major things we're dealing with, the repeal of blanket rezoning, downtown police station, water main repair, budgets, all of those things have been unanimous, if not just 1 or 2 folks who may be in the dissenting view.
Mayor, just another item on tomorrow's IPC agenda. So admin is recommending reducing red tape for the use of portable or modular classrooms. Should the city be making those accommodations for school boards to use those modular classrooms?
For sure. So our part at the City of Calgary is separate from the education system, but we do play a part in terms of approvals and permitting and processes. So I want the city to be pushing as fast as possible to get needed school space open. We're working very closely at the building permit, development permit, even zoning stage to get these needed school sites off the ground. So I fully support red tape reductions so that we can actually get those dollars out the door.
Admin is also recommending removing the need for a development permit for the temporary use of vacant school sites for things like private schools, libraries, approved uses. Should the city reduce red tape to accommodate private schools on sites that were intended for public schools?
I'm open to a conversation about how these vacant school sites should be used. But in most situations, I want the City of Calgary to utilize its right of first refusal to in most cases, if not every single case, I want the City of Calgary to utilize its right of first refusal to purchase these vacant school sites to continue to be used for public benefits. So right now, the city is able to purchase from the school boards these vacant sites. I want to make sure that the city is involved in that. And maybe it doesn't make sense today based on how a community or neighborhood has grown for a school to be there. Maybe it should be a park. Maybe it should be seniors housing. There's a lot of other community benefits there. So I want to see the city continue to be involved to ensure that those sites are for public benefit rather than private profit.
We have time for one more debate, folks.
Who do you think voted no the most?
You're not going to bring your question on that, are you?
Can I ask you really quickly my off topic? Can I ask you really quickly my off topic just so we can get it on camera? There was an 11-year-old girl. She got second place in a Stampede Agriculture speaking competition. Her topic was municipal land planning.
Yep.
And she wants to meet with you.
Absolutely. What's her name?
That is a great question. Sakshi Shinoy. Anyways, just in general, what do you think of young people getting involved in these, or at least thinking about these municipal issues and having the motivation to want to meet with a mayor at such a young age?
Well, I was really delighted to hear about Sakshi's achievement. I spent a bit of time on the grounds getting to meet especially the youth contingent. So many people were engaged through various competitions, skills, essay contests even. So, my door is always open to our future leaders, and I'm going to be reaching out to Sakshi right away to learn more from her. And I was really interested in her topic, especially when it comes to balancing the need for green space with downtown urban development. And I think that it's amazing that our future leaders are tackling these same questions than that our city council is. So I'll be delighted to hear her ideas in terms of how we can make sure that not every part in Calgary becomes a concrete jungle. I think those are her words. And I'm also quite interested in her ideas around food insecurity. So talking about making sure that as the city is zoning, that we're making sure that there's adequate access to grocery stores. I know speaking with some of the professionals at the Alex Community Food Center, as an example, they talk a lot about the existence of food deserts in certain areas of the city, especially East Calgary. So really delighted to see Sakshi's work on that, and I'm going to be reaching out with her right away. So, that's a top priority meeting.